Hello everyone, welcome to Coding with Ivan. So a few days back I shared a post on my social media where I shared a free API to get a list of quotes. So in this video we're going to make a quotes app like this. So I have already made that app, and if I open that, as you can see, we got a whole list of quotes. So from here we can click on this copy button to copy a quote. Okay, it's now copied to our clipboard, and here we got the quote itself and the author of that quote. Okay, so let's make this app. That's a quite simple app, so let's get started. So at first let me show you the API. So this is the URL of that API, and when we'll hit that, we'll get this response. This is a list of this JSON object which contains a text and the author name also in a string variable. Alright, I'll give the link of this API in the description. From there you can visit that. Okay, so now we are going to use retrofit in our Android Studio to integrate these APIs. So for this we have to add the dependency for the retrofit first. So for this we have to go to this GitHub repository of retrofit. I'll also give this link in the description. From there you have to visit here and you have to find the dependency right here. So I'll just copy this. Currently the version is 2.9.0 as you can see. So I'll just copy this and go back to my Android Studio, and here I'll open the Gradle scripts and I'll go inside this module level Gradle file. Okay, so inside here I'll go under these dependencies, and here I'll paste that dependency, but before that I have to write implementation, and then inside a quotation I'll paste that. Okay, so after that we need the Json converter library or the dependency for retrofit. So for this again we have to go to the repository, GitHub repository of retrofit, and here we'll get this Json converters dependency. I'll also give the link of this one in the description. Make sure you check that. So from here we'll just copy this and go back to Android Studio, and here we'll paste that. Alright, and here I'll just replace this latest version with the 2.9.0 because by the time of making this video the retrofits version was 2.9.0. so I'll just copy this and paste it here. Alright, and then I'll click on sync now right here, so that will download the dependency. Okay, so once it's done we can start our coding. I'll just close this Gradle file. So now at first I'll create a separate class to manage our API calling. So for this I'll just right click on this package name and create a new Java class. I'll call this as request manager. Alright, and hit enter. So inside this request manager class we'll do our API calling. So at first here I'll create a new object for the context. So I'll create create an object for the context, and then we'll also create an object for the retrofit. So I'll call the retrofit class, create an object for this equals new retrofit dot builder, this one, and then here I'll add a base URL, and here for the base URL we are going to use this API URL, and we'll just use this part. Okay, so I'll copy this and paste it here. Alright, and then we'll add the converter factory. So I'll write dot add converter factory, and here I'll create a new JSON converter factory. So I'll write JSON converter factory dot create. Okay, and then we can finally build our retrofit. Okay, add a semicolon here. Alright, and then under here I'll right click on it and click on generate, click on constructor. So that will create a constructor, and we'll only select this context, we won't select the retrofit from here, and then we'll click on OK. So here we got our constructor for this request manager class. Alright, so now we'll go under this constructor, and here we'll create a new interface for our API calling. So here I'll call this as a private interface, I'll call this as call quotes, and inside the body of that interface we'll define our endpoint. So our API calling method is a get method, okay, and the parameter for this get annotation will pass the endpoint of our URL. So here, as you can see, we used this part of the URL as our base URL, so we'll use the rest part as our endpoint. So I'll go back to the website, and here I'll copy the rest of this website. So API/quotes, I'll copy that and I'll paste it here inside a quotation, okay. And then here we'll create our call method. So I'll write call, and here we have to pass the model class of our API response. So let's create a model class first. So for this we'll again right click on the package name and create a new Java class. I'll call this as code response, hit enter, and here we got this code response class. So inside here we will create our objects. So if we go to our API, as you can see on the response, we are getting a list, and the list contains lots of JSON objects, and each of the object contains these two string objects. One is named as text and other one is named as author. Okay, so we'll just create these two objects, the text and the author. So I'll copy the title text from here. So make sure you copy the exact same name that's written inside this API, because otherwise you will end up with error. So I'll copy this text from here and go back here. Here I'll create a new string object. I'll paste the name here, initialize it with a empty string, and then similarly I'll copy this author and I'll go back here, create another string object. I'll paste it and initialize it with a empty string, okay. So after that we have to create a getter method. So I'll right click on this empty space here and click on generate, click on getter. We won't need the setter method now, so I'll only create the getter method. So I'll click on getter and we'll select both of them and hit OK. So here we got these getter methods. Alright, now we can close this, and here on the parameter of this call, as you can see inside the API, we are getting a list of these objects. So for this I'll write here a list of quote response. Alright, and we'll call this method as call quotes with smaller c, okay. And there is no parameter, we'll end this with a semicolon. Alright, so now we have created our interface. Now we have to create a method to access or to access the data from the main activity. So for this here I'll create a public method. So I'll write public void get all quotes, and inside the parameter we have to pass a object of a listener. So let's create the listener first. So here I'll again right click here, create a new Java class. I'll call this as quote response listener, okay. And this will be an interface. So we'll click on this interface and hit enter. Okay, so there we got this interface, quote response listener. So here inside this interface we will create two methods. One is for the fetch data, so I'll call this as void did fetch, and here in the parameter we'll pass two parameters. One is the list that we're getting from the API, so I'll call this as list of quote response, and I'll call this as response. And second one is a message that we're getting from the API, so I'll write a string object called message, okay. and then we'll add another method which is for the error. So I'll call this as did error, and this will only return a error message. So I'll just write a string object called message. Alright, so that's our code response listener interface. We'll close that and we'll pass this code response listener object here. So I'll write code response listener. I'll call this as listener. Alright, and then we'll create the body of this method. So inside the body, at first we'll just create an instance of this call codes interface. So I'll write call codes. I'll name this as call codes equals, we'll call our retrofit object that we created up here, retrofit dot create, and here we'll pass the class name, the call codes class. So I'll write call codes dot class. Alright, add a semicolon here, and then we'll create a call object. So I'll write a call, and this call will be for a list of code response. So I'll write list of code response. Okay, I'll name this as call equal, and here we'll call this call codes object that we created here. So I'll write call codes dot call codes, this one. Okay, so we'll add a semicolon here to close that, and then we'll just enqueue our call. So for this I'll write call dot enqueue, and here we'll create a new callback. So I'll write new callback, and here we got these two methods, the on response and the on failure. So inside the on response method, we'll check if our response is not successful. So for this we'll write a simple if condition. I'll check for the response dot is successful, and we'll add a not here. So we'll check for if the response is not successful. In that case, we'll just show a toast message. Here we'll pass the context, and for the message we'll pass request not successful. Okay, and after this toast, okay, here we'll just simply return from here. Okay, and if it is successful, then we'll go after that, and here we'll call our listener dot did fetch, and here we have to pass our list of code response and a message. So we'll get the response from here, this response. So we have to pass the response dot body at first. This is the list of the code response, and then for the message we'll pass response dot message. Okay, and now for the on failure, we'll just call our listener dot did error, and here we'll pass the message from this throwable. So for this I'll write t dot get message. All right, so our API calling is now done. We can now create an instance of this request manager in our main activity and call this get all codes method to access the response from the API. Okay, so now let's go to our main activity.java, and here at first let's create the UI of our activity main. So I'll go into the activity main.xml file, and inside here I'll just delete this parent layout, and I'll make this a linear layout, and here I'll remove this text view, and I'll add a new recycler view. I'll set its width to match parent and height to also match parent. Okay, and I'll give this recycler view an ID. I'll call this as recycler underscore home, and I'll give this a small margin of 8 dp. Okay, so now I'll just copy the ID of this, and I'll go to our main activity, and here I'll create a object for the recycler view, and I'll paste the ID here, and we'll initialize our recycler view here inside. So here I'll call the recycler underscore home equals find view by ID r dot id dot recycler underscore home. All right, so now we need to create an object for our Recyclerview's custom adapter. So before that, let's create a custom UI for our Recyclerview. So for this, we have to go inside our res folder, inside this layout files, and here I'll right click on it and create a new layout resource file. I'll call this as list underscore quote, and I'll click on OK, and I'll go into this split view. And from here, I'll replace this constraint layout to a card view. Let me zoom in a bit, and here I'll change the layout height from match parent to wrap content. Okay, and here I'll add some more attributes to this card view. So I'll add card background color to color white, then card corner radius to 8 dp, then the card elevation to 8 dp, and then I'll give this a small margin of 8 dp. Alright, and then inside this card view we'll create a new linear layout. I'll set its width to match parent, height to wrap content here, and I'll also give this linear layout an orientation of vertical. And after that, we'll go inside this linear layout, and here I'll add a simple text view. I'll set its width to match parent, height to wrap content here. I'll close this tag of text view, and we'll give this text view an ID. I'll call this as, let's say, text view underscore quote. Okay, let's add a demo text. So I'll write, this is a quote. Okay, let's add a text alignment. Let's set it to center. Let's change the text size to 22 sp here. Let's set the text color to be color black here, and the text style to be, let's say, italic. And we can also use a custom font. So here in this example, I'm going to use this font. This is called as Beauty Mountains font. I'll give the download link of this font in the description. From there you can download and use that, or you can use any other font that you want. Or if you don't want to use any custom font, then you can skip this option. So I'll just copy this and go to Android Studio, and here we need to create a new folder for our fonts. So for this, I'll right click on this res folder, create a new Android resource directory, and from here we'll select the resource type as font. Okay, and then we'll click on OK. So here we got this font folder. So I'll just copy this one, go back here, and here I'll right click on this font folder and click on paste, click on OK. So here we got our font. This is called the quote font.ttf file. Okay, so for adding the font into our text view, I'll write font family, and here we'll pass @font/quote font that we just copied here. As you can see, our font has been applied here. Alright, so after that we'll give this okay, let's give this a padding of 8 dp. Alright, that looks nice. So after that we'll create another text view. So let's just copy this text view that we created right now. I'll copy this, let me zoom out a bit, and here I'll paste this under here, and this time we'll change its ID to text view underscore author, and let's keep this as it is. We'll just remove the font from here. We won't use a font for the author name. Okay, and the text style will be normal, and the text size will be, let's say, 16 sp. Okay, so that's it for the text view author. Now we'll go under this and create a new button. So I'll create a new button. I'll set its width to match parent, height to wrap content here. I'll close this tag here, and I'll give this button an ID. I'll call this as button underscore copy, and here I'll set a text to this button. I'll call this as copy, and let's give this a margin of 16 dp overall. Alright, so that's it for the custom UI for our Recyclerview. Alright, So now we can close this list underscore code XML file, and here we will create our custom adapter for the recycler view. So for this, I'll right click on this package name, create a new Java class. I'll call this as code recycler adapter. Okay, hit enter. So here I got this code recycler adapter. So we need a view holder at first, so we'll go outside of this code recycler adapter and we'll create a new class for the code view holder. All right, so inside this codes view holder class, we'll make this extends the default view holder class of Recyclerview. So I'll make this extends Recyclerview.viewholder, and as you can see, it's showing an error because we have to implement a method. So we'll just right click on this bulb here and we have to click on this create constructor matching super. Let's click on that, and we got this constructor. So here we need to initialize our view objects that we created inside our this list underscore code XML file. So here, as you can see, at first we got this text view for the code, then a text view for the author, and then a button. So we'll just copy the ID of this text view code first, and we'll go back to the codes recycler adapter. So inside here, the view holder class will create a text view classes object, and I'll paste the name text view underscore code here. And after that, we need this text view underscore author, so I'll also paste it here. All right, let's close this with a semicolon, and then we need a button object. So the button name here was button underscore copy. I'll copy this and paste it here, the ID. Okay, and now we need to initialize them inside this constructor. So for this, I'll go here. Let's start with the text view code. So I'll copy this, paste here, equals item view dot find view by ID r dot id dot text view underscore code, add a semicolon here, and similarly I'll add these two also. So I'll copy this text view author from here, then I'll paste it here also for the ID, and for the button I'll copy this, paste it here, paste it here. Okay, so now we have initialized our views. Now we can start working on our code recycler adapter. So for this, we have to make this also extends the default class for the Recyclerview adapter. So I'll make this extends Recyclerview dot adapter, and here in the angle brackets we have to pass the view holder class. So we have this view holder class here, so I'll copy the name codes view holder and I'll paste it here. Okay, it's showing also an error because we need to implement some methods. So I'll go into this red bulb here, click on it, and we'll click on this implement methods. So from here we have to select these three and click on OK. So now as you can see, we have these three methods here: the Oncreateviewholder, Onbindviewholder, and the get item count. So at first we'll go up here and create some objects. At first I'll create an object for the context. So I'll write context, and then we'll need a list of the code response that we want to show inside our Recyclerview. So for this, I'll create a list of code response. I'll call this list. Okay, and then for the copy button, we'll create a separate listener. So I'll right click on this package name again and create a new Java class. I'll call this as copy listener. Okay, that will be an interface. All right, and inside this listener we'll create a method. So I'll call this as void on copy clicked. Okay, and I'll pass here a simple string, as we want to only copy the code here. So I'll just pass a string called text. Okay, so that's it. Now we can close this copy listener, and we'll create an object of the copy listener right here inside our code recycler adapter. So I'll write copy listener. I'll call this as listener. All right, and then we need to create a constructor for these three items. So I'll right click here, click on generate, click on constructor, and I'll select all of these three and click on OK. So here we got our constructor code recycler adapter. Okay, so now let's start working on the Oncreateviewholder. So here, instead of returning null, we'll return a new code viewholder, and here I'll call the layout inflator dot from. We'll pass the context dot inflate. I'll pass r dot layout dot this list underscore code that we created right here. So list underscore code. Then the second parameter is the parent that we got from here, and third one is false. Okay, that's it. Now we'll go into our Onbindviewholder, but before that, let's go to our get item count, and here, instead of returning 0, we'll return the list size. So I'll write list dot size. All right, and after that, let's start our Onbindviewholder. So here at first, we'll show the quote inside our text view quote and the author name on the text view author. So for this, I'll write holder dot text view quote dot set text, and here we'll get the quote from the list that we're getting. So I'll write list dot get from position. This is the position we're getting from the parameter right here. So list dot get position dot get text. All right, and similarly for the author, I'll write holder dot text view author dot set text, then list dot get from position dot get author. All right, and lastly, let's create a on click listener for our copy button. So for this, I'll write holder dot button underscore copy dot set on click listener new view dot on click listener, and inside the on click method, we'll call our listener that we got right here, listener dot on copy clicked, and here we'll pass a string that we want to copy. So we want to copy this this text we're getting for the code. So here I'll write list dot get, and here we won't pass the position directly. So for this, we'll write holder dot get adapter position. We'll go to the next bracket and write dot get text. Okay, so now let's do one thing. Okay, so that's it. And now we can start working on our main activity. So I'll go to our main activity.java file, and here we'll create some objects for our request manager class and for the code recycler adapter class. Okay, so at first, let's create an object for the request manager. I'll call this as manager, and then for the code recycler adapter, I'll write code recycler adapter. I'll call this as adapter. Okay, and also we'll need a object of the class progress dialog, because we want to show a progress dialog until our API response are coming. So for this, I'll write a progress dialog. I'll call this as dialog. All right, and now let's initialize this 3 inside our onCreate method. So I'll go after this Recyclerview home, and here at first I'll initialize our request manager class. So I'll write manager equals new request manager, and here we have to pass the context. So I'll pass this here, and then we need to call our API. So for this, I'll call this manager object, and then we'll call this get all codes method that we created inside our request manager class. So here we need to pass a listener for the code response listener. So let's create the listener here. So I'll go outside of this onCreate method and create a private final code response listener. I'll call this as listener equals new code response listener, and here we got these two methods. Here is an error because we have to add a semicolon. All right, and here on the did fetch, we have to show the data. So let's create a separate method to show the data. So I'll write let's say show data, and here we'll pass this response that we're getting, which is a list of code response. So I'll write responses semicolon. This show data is showing an error because this method doesn't exist, so we have to create that. So for this I'll click on this, and then we'll click on this red bulb here, and I'll click on this create method show data, and I'll click on this main activity. So our method is now created right here. Okay, we'll come to that later. So here let's do one thing. For the manager.getAllCodes, we have to pass the listener. We created the listener here, so we'll just pass the name listener to our parameter. So I'll write listener, and then we need to show our progress dialog. So for this I'll write, let's set up our dialog first. So I'll write dialog equals new progress dialog. We have to pass the context, so I'll pass this. Okay, and then we have to set a title for the dialog. So I'll write dialog dot set title, and here I'll say this as loading. Okay, and then we need to show this dialog. So I'll write dialog dot show. Okay, so that will show the dialog when we'll create our activity. And once we got the response, we can dismiss our dialog. So for this I'll write dialog dot dismiss here. Okay, so that will when we'll get the data from the API, we'll show the data, and then we'll just dismiss our dialog. Okay, so if we get an error, for that case we'll show a toast message. Here for the context I'll pass main activity dot this, as our activity is main activity, and for the text we'll pass this message that we're getting from here. So I'll write message. Okay, and here before showing this toast message we can also dismiss our dialog. So I'll write dialog dot dismiss. Okay, so now let's come to this show data. So here at first we'll set up our recycler view, and then we'll initialize our adapter class also. So at first set up our recycler view. So I'll write recycler underscore home dot set has fixed size to true. And one thing you have to make sure is that before working here, make sure your recycler home is initialized inside your onCreate method. Okay, so after that recycler home set as fixed size true, and then we'll set a layout manager to our recycler view. So I'll write recycler home dot set layout manager, and here we're going to use a staggered grid layout manager. So I'll write new staggered grid layout manager, and here inside the parameter at first we have to pass the span count. So here in this example I'm going to show 2 columns, so I'll pass 2 here, and then the second parameter is the orientation. So here I'll write with capital L linear layout manager dot vertical. Okay, because we want our layout to be vertical. Okay, add a semicolon at the end, and then we have to initialize our adapter. So I'll write adapter. This adapter is the object that we created here. So adapter equals new quote recycler adapter, and here we need to pass 3 objects. First one is the context, then we need to pass the list, and then a listener. Okay, so at first let's pass the context. So context is the main activity dot this here, and then for the list we can pass it from the parameter of this method, which is the responses. So I'll write responses, and the third parameter is the listener for the copy listener. So for this we have to at first go up here into our main activity class, and here we need to make this class implements this copy listener. So I'll write implements copy listener. That will show an error because we need to implement the method. So I'll just right click on this bulb and click on implement methods. We'll select this on copy clicked method and click on OK. So here we got this on copy clicked method inside our main activity, and then we'll go right here inside our adapter what we wrote here. So for the third parameter we'll then pass just this. Okay, and after that we need to attach this adapter to our recycler view. So for this I'll go to a new line and I'll write recycler underscore home dot set adapter and we'll pass this adapter here. Alright, so I guess our recycler view now should show the data. Okay, so let's run our application at first to see if it's working or not. But before that, one thing you have to make sure is that you have to add the internet permission inside your manifest. Often I forget that, so make sure you do that here. So I'll go into this android manifest.xml file, and inside here after this manifest tag we'll add a tag users permission, and here we'll define the permission as android.permission.internet, and we'll close this tag. Okay, so make sure you add this line to use the internet. Alright, so now we can run our application to see the changes. So let's click on run here, and let's open our phone to see the change. Okay, it's installing. As you can see, our app is installed, it says loading, and we got the codes. Alright, that's nice. So we haven't added the copy to clipboard method yet, but we're getting the codes here. That's nice. So now let's try to add the copy to clipboard method to our copy button. Okay, so let's do that. So for this, at first we have to work on this on copy click method. Okay, so here at first we will create an instance of our clipboard manager. So I'll write clipboard manager. I'll call this as clipboard manager equals, we'll just cast this to our clipboard manager type. So I'll write here clipboard manager, and here we'll get access to our system service for the clipboard service. So I'll write let's say get system service, and for the service name we'll pass context dot clipboard service context dot clipboard service. All right, and then we'll end this with a semicolon. We'll go to a new line here, and here we'll create a clipboard data. So for this we have to write the clip data, this one. Let's call this as data equals clip data dot new plain text, this one. And here for the text label, let's write this as copied data. Okay, and for the data that we want to copy, we'll simply pass the text that we're getting from this parameter. So we'll just pass here the text. Okay, so here in the new line we'll just add our clip to our clipboard. So for this I'll write here the clipboard manager dot set primary clip, and here in the parameter we'll pass this data that we created. So I'll write here the data. Okay, so our data has been added to our clipboard, and after that we can show a toast message that the data is copied to clipboard. So let's show a toast message here. For the context I'll pass again main activity dot this, and for the text here I'll write copied to clipboard. Okay, let's make this C capital. All right, so that will copy our code to this clipboard. All right, so now let's run our application to see the changes. Run again, it's installing, and here we got our code application. Here is all the codes, and let's try to click on this copy button to check if the data is being copied or not. So I'll click on copy. As you can see, it says copied to clipboard. Now let's try to paste it inside somewhere. So for this, let me open the note app that I created earlier. So inside here, let's try to paste it here. Paste. Alright, our code has been copied. Okay. So that's how we can create a simple code application on Android. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any issues or problems regarding this video, then you can comment down below, or also you can post on my Facebook group. I'll try to solve that. And thanks a lot for watching.